in allopathic medicine, I think many times it's missed. It's missed. And I believe that it seems to be that the answer is a pill. And for me personally, and that's why I think you may have invited me on here, I don't personally think a pill is the answer. It may be short term, but long term, no. You need to get to the bottom of illness.
Welcome to the BioNexus Health Podcast with Dr. Jodie A. Darshaw, who holds a PhD in integrative medicine, a doctorate in OT, specializing in neurology, is board certified in integrative pediatrics, an internationally recognized pioneering clinician, registered herbalist with the American Herbalist Guild, and author. Her naturopathic journey began when her son, who was diagnosed with autism, developed a series of traumatic, life-threatening chronic health issues. For over a decade, she's honed her skills to combine the ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with Western herbal medicine that has helped patients in over 50 countries and recovered her son, who is on his own journey towards becoming a physician. And now here's your host of BioNexus Health Podcast, Dr. Jodie A. Darshaw.
Today, we have with us an amazing mother who has recovered her son on the spectrum and initially put on 4 psychiatric medications. This mom has faced tremendous challenges, but her wonderful spirit, never say die attitude, and ever hopeful for recovery has brought her to where she is today. So please help me in welcoming Cherie. Thank you for being with us today, Cherie. I'm really grateful to have you here. And thank you for your generosity for agreeing to share your remarkable story with us.
Thank you, Dr. Darshaw. It's a pleasure. My main reason for wanting to do this is really not only to tell my story with my son, my only son. It really is to give other parents, other mothers, other fathers, parents, hope and inspiration, because it is a very treacherous journey. And really, when your child has a problem or you see them suffering so badly and you really don't know what is going on, what is happening, you're completely lost and there's really no answers. There's no answers. I'm hoping, or my hope is to give these parents inspiration and some hope for the future, because you can never give up on your child.
Yes.
You can never give up, and days can get dark, very dark. We've had a lot of challenges, to say the least, but it's very important to hold on to that hope and that faith that you can, to some extent, recover your child.
I couldn't agree more, Cherie. You're aware of my journey as well.
Yes, and that's what initially attracted me to your practice, because my search, one doctor, I started searching on Facebook and joined these groups, and I was searching for answers even for myself, for my own health reasons.
Okay.
And I found one thing led to another, and what I found with you when I was reading on your website is that you had one and only son, and that is my situation. And I said, my goodness, he has many of the same symptoms as my son and you as well. And I just see so many similarities in our challenges and our situations with our son. So that is what initially I definitely knew that I had to make an appointment.
Well, I'm really glad you did.
Yes.
And here we are today, right?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about Santino's symptoms before BioNexus Health, and also what I know you've put in a tremendous amount of time, effort, and resources into your son from a very young age, from the time he was diagnosed. He did end up being put on psych meds as well, much to your regret. I know you've mentioned that every single day. You would regret, but you wanted to give him the best chance based on the best research that was out there. So can you just take us on your journey and how you arrived at BioNexus? That the goal is to understand why you chose an herbal approach, and why do you think the initial biomedical approach wasn't, strongly successful for you? So,
Okay. So I will try to make this as brief as I can, but give enough details. So I would say when he was 2 years old, I noticed odd behavior. It was just odd. I will use that word. And at the time, I didn't know what sensory issues were. He hated water hitting his head, hated it. He screamed. And I really didn't understand what was going on. He hit every milestone. He walked when he was supposed to walk. He talked when he was supposed to talk. He did everything. So that was just very odd to me, but no real red flags. So he went through, I started seeing in kindergarten, some behavioral changes. And then through first grade and second grade, I would get constant notes from the teachers. And I just noticed behavioral changes and some anxiety. And geez, you know what? I have all this information in my head. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to tell this story. I guess really I really did not know what to do. I've always had a more natural approach with him. I stopped giving him his jabs at 3 months.
okay.
So, but I took that very seriously, and I made sure that his diet, I was very fastidious with his diet. I made a lot of things homemade for him. I watched all the no dyes, no red dye, no preservatives. I read every label ingredient just to make sure that I did keep his immune system very healthy. I didn't load him with junk. I did really watch very faithfully what he was eating. And so with that in mind, that was always in my heart, a very natural approach, because I tried to do that with myself to some extent. I never loved medication. So he was starting to have the situations in school with peers, peer relations, and different things like that, until I thought I really didn't know what to do. So in third grade is when I did decide to put him on medication. And I honestly, it bothered me. It bothered me greatly, because that really, I really didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was happening to my son. I didn't understand it. But so I did that. I did put him on medication. And again, I do regret that, because that's not really what is in my heart and what my belief system is. But I was kind of desperate. Mm-hmm. So in fourth grade, things really went off the rails. He went off the rails. It was, to say the least, terrifying. His behavior was terrifying. And it is a little difficult to speak about it. And any parent that can relate to this type of illness, pandas, mold toxicity, will understand probably what I'm saying. It's hard to go into depth, because I think that for myself, and again, many parents probably have post-traumatic stress disorder from it, because it was that stressful. It was terrifying. A lot of hospital visits, ER visits. So again, so he really hit the rails, and I was at a desperate moment, and that is why I did continue the medication. So to try to make my story a little more succinct, we went on this route for more than a few years until my own gut said, I knew my maternal instinct said, something, this is not my child. This is wrong. This is not my child. I don't know what is going on. And through that time, I was reading. I read constantly for hours. I researched, read. I tried to connect with anybody that I could, just trying to get more answers to what is going on. My gut told me that something is not right. You don't have a typical child. And then something went wrong, and I didn't know what it was because I was not really getting any help from medical doctors.
Mm-hmm.
I was not getting help. I really was not getting many answers. And he did get diagnosed with ASD when he was 10. And I thought that doesn't make sense to me. Something did not make sense to me. And a child just can't get diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder at 10. It did not sit right with me. So that made me just more, I just needed to research even more. I needed to find the answers. And also, what I noticed in my reading is that I was suffering from some of the very symptoms that he was. So I thought, there's something very odd that I can't put my finger on, but I know something is going wrong, and I need to search out someone that can help me. So for instance, on Facebook, I joined a few support groups or information like biomedical approaches, and I just kept digging and digging and gleaning information from one website from another.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard other mothers talk about this PANS. So PANS was my first red flag. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is what I believe he has. And then also the conversation of Lyme and Bartonella. And I thought, from my thought perspective, is when you hear Lyme, you get bit by a tick immediately and you have Lyme disease. Mm-hmm. So, but in any event, I listened to all that information, and I found one doctor that was more of a natural approach and helped children with ASD, PANS, PANDAS, mold toxicity, which led me to a Lyme literate doctor, which then led me to find you. And then also I made my appointment, and you are in the same state that I live in, which was beautiful. And I was delighted when I saw that. I couldn't have been happier. That was at a time when we could make appointments and go. And so now it's Zoom. Yeah. So we're a little bit, we could meet anywhere. So then I also saw you I went to the Autism One conference in Chicago, which I thought was absolutely wonderful. And I felt like I met my tribe. There were so many caring parents that really knew about all these different biomedical approaches. And that's what really started me on the journey. And I met with you. We've been treating for the last, I guess, maybe almost 2 years, I think. Almost. Maybe 2 years. And I saw it was hard. I don't want to make it seem like this is, I would love to say that it was easy. It was not easy. It was not easy. It was very difficult at times. It was frightening. There were a lot of things that I had to do, and you have to pray. I had to pray many times, because you have to do whatever from my perspective, I had to do whatever I had to do to save my child and bring him back to a state of health, because that was not my child. It was not my child.
Now, the BioNexus approach is mostly herbal, and it's not easy, like you mentioned. It is a step-by-step process. Each subsequent step builds up on the previous step. You need to empower the body to be ready for antimicrobials, what is known as die-off reactions or detox reactions, which happen with almost all natural approaches. So that's one of the hardest things to do, requires a lot of organization, a lot of sacrifices have to be made, and in keeping the focus on your child,
Yes.
keeping the hope alive. So can you tell us how you managed to convince Santino to do all of these herbals, all of these vitamins and minerals, all of these supplement, remove the Wi-Fi, dietary changes, reduction in EMFs. I mean, you have been just remarkable in being able to implement step by step whatever was needed. So if you can, let us know how you manage that, and what improvements have you seen in Santino since that?
Okay, so we started. His appointment was before mine. I've been putting my child in front of myself because I am treating with you as well. So we both had to heal at the same time, but his appointment was first, and I made sure you have to be organized. So you have to get a system. It is a lot of information to digest, and he was on board with it. But you have to do little step by step. So that wasn't really the difficult part. He was still on just 2 medications. He was on 2 at a time. And my goal was always to get him off of those medications. I always wanted to, but I could never find a doctor that I could really work with. And you just cannot take a child off of medication and then have some underlying illnesses that you are not aware of, and he's still suffering, and you're going to send him to school. So it was just a matter of time. So when I started with you or Santino, it was maybe August, and I did the whole regimen. And that year, it was 2019, he did get strep again, and I think he even had scarlet fever. So I actually had to pull him. Desperate times call for desperate measures.
Right.
My goal was I was getting him off of this medication, and I was not taking no for an answer, and I was going to do it, and I did not care how I had to do it. I had to do it. I knew it was going to be difficult, and it was, but I had to do it step by step. You cannot just pull the child off of the medication. So we did have, he was having severe anxiety, but I was trying to do his regimen day by day. I did pull him out of school because he did have a doctor's note. And actually that was a blessing because I had a chance to focus on Santino, his health. Because if he does not have health, he does not have anything. So I literally isolated ourselves, and that's all I did. Took care of his health, treated him with his herbal remedies and homeopathic medicine. I did have schooling, tried to at least have his work, a teacher sent at home. He was going through a very difficult period at that time, pulling him off the medication. It was not easy. He was having major anxiety, but it started to fade little by little. And I did and keeping him home at that time was, again, it was quite a blessing because I definitely had the chance to control the food that was in. So I had him on, there was no gluten, there was no casein, no dairy, a lot of fruit. I had him on a lot of fruit, a lot of raw fruit, berries, blueberries, strawberries, watermelon, grass-fed beef. So his diet was, I think, pretty excellent. And month by month, his symptoms, just the anger fits, started to diminish. The rage, that's a big one with Bartonella. And I just started to see everything diminish. And then COVID hit. And then the kids, they were not in school. But in the meantime, I also like to add, he went from school to school. In 2019, he was in a school that specialized or for special education, because, and it was actually, that was very good for him. But the good news is that in February of this year, I accomplished my goal a little earlier than I had planned, and he is in our township school. And before I had this meeting with you, I actually opened up a report card, or yes, I guess it was a report card, hundreds.
Wow.
So I am thrilled because now he is in a mainstream school. The teacher said he was a delight in class, delight to have. I do not get letters from the teacher anymore because he was having very serious difficulties in school. The difficulties were severe, and because his brain was not functioning properly. So when your brain is not functioning properly, you can't think, you can't do math, you cannot have typical relationships with other peers. It just made our life a living hell. And I think children that suffer from this have, and especially even at his young age, they've been through a lot in their lives.
Yes.
And I look at it, many people may look at it like the child has behavioral issues. And I never really looked at it like that. The child is suffering. The child is suffering. And in my mind and in my heart, I was not going to stop until I got answers, and I have to figure out what is going wrong. Now, I don't have all the answers yet. I think I have many of them, but I think it's a continuous education every day. Every day I learn something, and every day I maybe change up different plans that I have for him in different ways that he is growing. He is growing fine. He's a sweet boy. The way I see it is I feel as though I have recovered my son to some extent, the little boy that I had, because I lost my little boy. Somewhere he got lost. It almost felt like, and I think many other parents can relate to this, because you feel like you lose your child, like you lost them.
Oh, yes.
And that is a feeling of very severe grief. And, I think I can see why many parents need support groups, because it is a very difficult road. It is a road that many parents, if they don't have a child that is suffering through this, they don't have any idea. They really have no idea for the pain that actually the child is suffering through. And it is difficult. It is very difficult. But the way I did anything that I could, in fact, there were times when a big issue was the electronics, because children that have PANS, they have OCD and they have addictive behaviors. And I really thought that it was becoming out of control. And I thought that it was overwhelming our lives and my life as well. So I basically pulled cable. There was no TV. Well, I have a TV, there's no cable, and there were no electronics. I pulled no Wi-Fi, no internet, and I actually pulled the electronics, and I took them out of the house. It was the first day. And again, many parents that have children with ASD, PANS, they may understand what I'm talking about, but that is very difficult to pull the electronics, because when they pull tantrums, it's not a 20-minute thing, and it's horrific. But the first day is difficult, maybe even the second day, but then when you finally get them, you have to occupy their mind with something else. And I had to push to get them outside, to do other things. The electronics cannot sit there all day. So that was the big issue. So changing the diet was critical. And to me, I honestly think diet is critical in anyone who is ill. Like, that is the first step that you should examine. And I also found with other, allopathic medicine, many doctors do not even ask about what you are eating. And I always found that to be so odd, even with myself. How can you diagnose them if you're not asking about their diet or stress levels or exercise? But that is what I found, that no one picked up that key with diet. And to me, that's critical. So that was definitely changed. His diet was always good, but gluten was pulled, and that is a big factor, I think, and also dairy. So, and again, the electronics, you have to watch the screen time. And it really, I did pull him from school for many months. And that, again, that was a blessing, because that did allow me to get him off all the medication. And he is off of it to this day. Nothing. He is on all, in fact, also today, in my mailbox was a nice big box of supplements from BioNexus Health. So I was delighted to see that, and I can't wait to rip into it to get all our new protocol going, because he is definitely, he's not there yet, but he's almost there, because he can function in school. He's actually doing homework at home. He is going to be ready. My goal always was, I figured maybe 2 years, he was in a special school, and my goal was to get him into a typical high school, and he is on his way. He is on his way there. So, and he is interacting with other students. Okay. He is making friends. And I think we have a lot of good things to look forward to in the future for him. So, but again, I would love to say that this has been, it's not easy. It's not easy recovering your child, and you have to stick with it. You have to stick with it no matter how hard it gets. And it does get hard. And I'm sure, I mean, I think I had a pretty tough situation, and you can never give up. You can never give up on your child. You just have to keep forging through. You have to, if people are spiritual, you have to pray. You have to hold on to hope. You have to hold on to faith. You have to hold on any way that you can, no matter how you can. If you have to go to a supportive parent. And honestly, I think through all of this, I really did have to try to isolate myself, because that, the most important thing, I had to get rid of external forces. In other words, it was, the focus was on him and only him. And any other outside forces, I had to cut away. I had to take him out of sports. He did, I pulled him out of school, and that was the focus. The focus was health. The focus was diet. The focus was getting him off of these medications, keeping him healthy, keeping him, I want a happy child. I want a well-adjusted child. And I want to, again, over and above all, definitely healthy. And I think that really allowed me to do that with him. But now he's a typical 14-year-old teenager and doing the typical things that a 14-year-old boy would do. So I can handle those type of things. The other things that have happened in the last few years, no, not so much. But the bottom line is never, and also to mothers, I'd like to speak directly to, never listen to your maternal instinct. We have that gut feeling that if you think there's something wrong with your child, you have to listen to your gut and keep searching. You have to keep searching, because if you feel like there's something wrong, just keep, and if you get a diagnosis from one doctor, I really didn't make, I did seek allopathic care for him, and it really, it was not good. It was not good for us.
Many moms go down that route in the beginning, and for some of us, it becomes a little bit extended, because you feel that you're trying to save his life, more or less, to just give him, as normal life as possible at that time. So yes, and you're absolutely right. That's one thing that I like to emphasize is that mothers pay attention to their maternal instinct. Put aside what toxic people and toxic forces in your life are trying to tell you or interfere with that beautiful connection that you have with your child. What I wanted to ask you was, so Santino has lost weight. He's healthy. You mentioned many of his symptoms have improved as well. He's in a mainstream school. You did not hesitate to pull him out of school during his, detox reactions, die-off reactions, during his weaning period. And that's something that is important, I feel, because I had to do that myself as well. We actually had a plan with the school committee that, hey, you know what? There's going to be lots of ups and downs. And if at some point we need to do home instruction, then, hey, you know what? That's just what we need to do. We need to do what's needed, right?
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that, because my focus was health is first. School is very important, but if he does not have health, and there are going to be a lot of ups and downs, and it was easier for me to have him at home because he could recover. And another thing that I would like to add, when he was on these medications, I have always been fastidious with his diet, and it has been very clean. And one thing that I found really, I'm trying to think of the word that I'd like to use. I guess alarming, and I didn't understand it. If I was that fastidious with his diet, he gained 45 pounds, and he is not a child that eats fast food, not junk food. And I was really alarmed by that. And I knew it was not from what I was feeding him. And I knew it was from the medication. I thought, my gosh, how can medications put 45 pounds on? He was very much overweight. And that broke my heart. It really did. Because I know that's not healthy. It's not healthy. So when I did get him onto all his herbal supplements, homeopathic remedies, and I took him off that medication, he started to, and also I did give him more fruits, raw fruits, a lot of berries, a lot of watermelon, grapes. And again, he does like meat, so I give him grass-fed beef. He started to shed weight. He is actually, and he's only 14 years old. He's about 5'9" right now. He is thin. He is slender, and he is tall, but he shed that weight very naturally, very naturally. And that's how, to this day, he still does eat very well. And he definitely, I do have to prepare I call them his cocktails.
Yes.
Because he's a boy, he's a teenager, and I don't know if for me, I want to make sure that he is doing all of them. So I will prep them for him. I guess boys may, he may try to maybe skip a few, but he's pretty good with it. He is pretty good, because what I say to him, do you see and do you understand what we've been through? Do you understand how far you've come? Do you want to continue on this path of wellness? So when you present it to him like that, he is definitely going to be even more so on board with all this protocol. And he realizes that what mom did for him was definitely helpful. And the reason really why he is where he is today, and that he's happy in a school. And the beauty of this all, and I really started to see great improvements last September of 2020. All the classes were Zoom. So I did have to get him, because in the past, it was torture to get him to go to school. The anxiety was terrible. He wouldn't want to go. He didn't want to wake up in the morning. He would give me a hard time. he would give me a hard time about everything. He did not want to go. He did not like it. He had anxiety. He had anxiety about a lot of the work, because I can understand to an extent that his brain was not functioning properly. But in September of 2020, wanted to get up at 8 o'clock to get on those Zoom calls. And he was definitely more interested. I didn't have to drag him out of bed, so to speak, to get him to get on his Zoom lessons. And then it progressed from there. And then we had talked in his IEP with his case manager that, you know what, my goal, I said, I would like to try to get him into maybe one day a week to see how he would do. Can we have him in the typical, in the middle school, and let's see how it goes. So they did it for the one day, and actually they said, wow, he did great. We would like to try a few more days. I was hesitant about that because I didn't want him to backslide. And then I didn't want him to fall flat on his face and get let down. But eventually, within a month, they said, I think he's ready. And he started going 3 days. And they said, he's a wonderful addition to our class. He participates. And they said he was ready. So again, it was a little sooner than I had thought, but now he went 5 days. And now he does go to, they are in full time. He doesn't do Zoom lessons. He is in school full time until 12:30. And then he comes home, and then he does meetups for classes. Then they reconvene at 1:30. And I never hear not one thing about not wanting to go to school. Not one thing. He gets up in the morning on his own. He takes a shower. To me, that, and any other parent may understand what I'm speaking of. He does it on his own. He gets his shower. He does what he's supposed to do, and he goes to school. And he's on, for the most part, on time. I do have to work on a few other things. His executive function needs work. It needs a little bit of work. So I know he has we probably all have a little room to improve.
Yes, of course. Well, if I may, I remember you mentioned that on some days he's able to walk to school on his own.
He walks every day. We are that close to the school that he walks to school every day on his own.
That is, once again, that is, sorry, that is a remarkable achievement as well, that he has the self-awareness, environmental awareness, safety awareness, that he's able to walk to school, and he's able to function in school.
Yes.
Sorry. He's making good gains in school. There's focus, there's concentration. He's making friends. This actually reminds me, you mentioned that Santino was diagnosed at a much older age than is typical. Of course, it is entirely possible that the diagnosis was missed all along, depends on the doctors you see. I had another child, Jake, also from New Jersey, which was similar. He was diagnosed on the spectrum at 7.5, 8 years of age, and very typical symptoms of autism spectrum disorder. But overall, we discovered it was Lyme-induced autism, and biotoxin illness was complicating a lot of his cognitive abilities, executive function, like you mentioned. And he made a really remarkable recovery, very similar to Santino's. And I remember, we were doing in person back then. He came to me, he just, opened the door, ran in, and he gave me a hug. And he came up, he's big and tall, Jake, right? So he came down to my level. I'm petite. And he's holding my face, and he goes like, Dr. Deshore. I'm like, yes, Jakey. He goes, I can make friends now.
Oh my gosh.
That is,
parent, that is the biggest thing, because through all of this for many years, it's heartbreaking. It is very heartbreaking when you see that your child cannot make friends and does not have friends. And it's heartbreaking. We take for granted what other children can do so naturally. So it is so inspiring to me and makes me feel so good that when I see him getting together with friends again, and we're not completely there yet, but he is on his way to making friends. I mean, for most parents, I mean, for me, I guess I should speak for myself. I want my child to be happy above all.
Right.
You want your child to be healthy and happy. They are my two goals with him. But something that you said about the Jake in first grade, and again, I really didn't know what was going on because I would always get emails from the teachers, and I thought, I don't really, what is this all about? I really was dumbstruck. But they basically said that he's a very gifted child. He scored in the 90 percentile. Like he always was, he was gifted. He would be in maybe more advanced, not even when you're in first grade, I don't really know if there's advanced classes, but they said his emotional issues kept him behind. And I thought, emotional issues? That was from Bartonella, I believe. Bartonella, like you said, Lyme.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Also,
Yes.
also biotoxin illness contributes.
That was complicating the issue.
Exactly.
And I didn't know that. I didn't know that at the time. But now, I mean, my son is he's a bright boy. He is very bright. And I'm hoping that with continued treatment, that we can start to restore and repair his brain to what he can actually become. I want to make sure that I give him every opportunity to be the child that he was destined to be. And I do remember when he was diagnosed when he was 10, and I went to an area hospital in the Philadelphia region. And I remember one thing that the doctor said to me that really just I hung on to. And I remember them saying he may not ever be able to drive. And I thought, I of anything he said that just really, because again, at 10 years old, and they're just giving me this diagnosis, and they're saying that he might, and I figured, why wouldn't he be able to drive? And I don't know if it was because of the sensory issues or, to be quite honest, what it was, but I said, no, I'm not accepting that. I'm not accepting it. And I will not accept it. I didn't like it, and I didn't understand it, but I was not accepting that, and I will not accept it. And I think part of you have to be tenacious. It's hard. And I think even the most tenacious of women or men or fathers, mothers or fathers, can have the days can become very dark and very depressing because you feel like there's no way out for your child. And my gosh, life is so difficult. Life is so terrible. And is there any hope? Is there any help? But you just have to hang on. You have to figure out a way that you can hang on, however it may be, whether you have to go to, I have to say, some of these Facebook groups are very good. They were very productive. They were very inspiring. And again, one of the reasons that I wanted to do this, because I think I tend to be more of a private person. When I heard of these women, mostly women, some may have been fathers, but I think it's mostly the mothers, that they were coming out and telling their stories, which was giving me hope. And I needed to hear this. I needed them because they had much more knowledge than I did. So I would glean this information off one parent, off another, and then I would skip around to these different sites and I would find information here and there, and I would read and I would read and read and read until I couldn't read anymore, and I would research. And I would get that information, and that would give me hope to hang on, that, you know what, he can have the life that he deserves to have. But you have to be tenacious. You have to hang on. You have to be strong. And finding a support system is, I think, very beneficial. And it doesn't have to be a large support system. Maybe one person, maybe two people, or even if it's not your family, maybe your family can be your tribe at Autism One. You make friends there. You make friends on these Facebook groups.
Yes,
like
yes.
that, like biomedical,
Yeah, I
you know,
would
I
agree.
started, yes, so you can do that.
I
You
would,
can do
yes.
that.
One thing that you said, it's, this is so awesome. Like it's just two mothers talking. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you, but this is just a normal conversation. So because you've been through it, I've been through it. I'm like, you know what? Let me add something there. So one thing that you mentioned was that we've been working with Santino almost 2 years, and that it is, when you say journey, that is an appropriate word. It takes time. So just to sum it up, Shiri, can you in a few sentences, can you sum it up for us that Santino, before starting an herbal protocol, herbal medicine, BioNexus protocol, before and after, if you had to summarize, what would you say?
Let's repeat that again, because I was hanging on to something that you said that I wanted to add. So can if I don't say it, I will forget. I wanted to add something.
Yes.
There is no magic pill. There's no magic pill. And I wanted to relate that back to the pharmaceutical medication, which I always really so much knew. No magic pill. I mean, it may help for some time, but you have to get to the underlying causes of illness.
Right.
Okay, so please repeat your question, because when I hear something, then my mind goes off and I had to say it. So repeat your question, please,
Oh,
Dr.
yes, of
Stewart.
course, yes. So
Okay.
if you have to summarize in a few sentences, Santino, his symptoms, how your son, before starting the BioNexus herbal protocol, and after, which would be now, what would you say in a few sentences?
Symptoms before, nightmare. If I need to get very simple, a nightmare. And I mean that truly. Now, a pleasure. But if I can elaborate on nightmare, with Bartonella, a lot of rage, anger, flying off the handle, a lot of cognitive issues. My gosh, again, I mean, I could really, there was a laundry list. There was a laundry list, and it was long. And yeah, the best word is nightmare. It was literally, I really thought that I was caught and trapped in a nightmare. And now, when I saw that the clouds were starting to clear and the sun was starting to shine again, which I always hoped that it would, I find that my son is a pleasure to be around. The child is a joy. And I remember thinking these words. In fact, I'm in my business today where I'm doing this Zoom call, and I remember I had to bring him here he would come here with me so he could be around me because of the whole COVID thing. I wanted to make sure he was with me, and he would play here and he would be in my back room. And I remember that's sort of when it hit me last year that he was really starting to recover, because when I told him to get off of his video games, he did. He got off of them. He might hem haul a little bit, but there was no more resistance. There was no more fighting, no more arguing. He was an absolute joy to be around. I enjoyed my child again. I could hug my child again. We could laugh. There were no more some of the sadness was lifting, some of the negative challenges that we were dealing with were really lifting. And again, I always tried, because when you're a mother, we have to figure out a way to deal with work,
right,
and your family. And that is very difficult. I am self-employed, so I do have a lot on my shoulders. And again, through this whole COVID, I had to figure out a way, and many parents are going to have to do this. I had to figure out a way. I was not going to take no for an answer. You have to figure it out. I don't care how you do it. Figure it out. You have to for your child. So I did have him here to some extent. And if you want to play on your computers, you play in, set up a little back room. He could play there and he would stay with mom. I would prepare his food. I'd figure it out. He'd eat here. I'd spend time with him. And that was a nice way of balancing work with family, my son. But I was able to see his progression into, just ridding himself of all these, I don't know, I guess I would say very negative. I don't know what the word is I'm trying to find here.
Behaviors.
Behaviors, thank you. Behaviors. And they were very negative. But again, I found joy in my own child. And he's a pleasure most of the time. Okay, most of the time. He's 14. So now he's a joy, but he's 14. So we do have the typical hormones going on. Sometimes a little attitudinal, but he's a loving boy. And he's always been a warm child. And I enjoy him.
Wonderful.
I enjoy him.
Yes.
And I'm also working on, my niece is now starting to treat with you. So I'm very happy about that, because now when I see something, I'm very analytical. So when I see a child that I think, and I don't throw my opinion, I watch what I do, but as far as my niece goes, I see some things that were happening that were very similar to my son.
Mm-hmm.
And she does need your help in that area. So now that'll be my next little challenge, I guess, or help with her. I'd like to help her along. So I'm actually looking forward to that, getting her to a state of wellness for sure.
We will, with what you've achieved with Santino, I'm sure we'll see good results with your niece as well.
I'm optimistic.
Hard work, yeah.
I'm optimistic for sure.
Good. Yes. That is the key, is to stay optimistic, to work hard. And I'm sure everybody watching has truly benefited from having you here with us today.
Yep.
So I would once again like to take this opportunity to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here with us today. I'm sure you've inspired many, given many strength. And, I'll look forward to having you here one more time to speak about your good health. But I would like to see you. Sorry, go ahead. What?
You're very welcome, Dr. DeShore. Thank you for inviting me here to speak to other parents who need it, because that really is my goal. I definitely, because we need to support each other.
Yes.
This is a very difficult diagnosis, and I'm sorry to say this, but many doctors in, I guess, the allopathic in allopathic medicine, I think many times it's missed. And I believe that it seems to be that the answer is a pill. And for me personally, and that's why I think you may have invited me on here, I don't personally think a pill is the answer. It may be short term, but long term, no. You need to get to the bottom of illness.
Exactly. Yes, that is what I speak of in almost all of my lectures as well. It is important to look at the root cause. And many parents have asked me to have other parents like yourself who are willing to speak, willing to share their stories on a public platform. So it can be inspirational, as well as, it's pretty much, like I said before, it's hope and light. So on that note, all of you watching, thank you for joining us today. And I shall be back soon with another episode of Autism Uprooted with BioNexus Health Clinic.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Zashor.
Take care, Shuri.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you for joining Master Herbalist Dr. Jody A. Dashaw, Director of the BioNexus Health Clinic and BioNexus Herbals, on the BioNexus Health Podcast, where we explore and share information and stories about recovering and healing from chronic and environmental illnesses such as mold biotoxin illness, Lyme disease, autism spectrum disorder, fatigue, Crohn's and colitis, mast cell activation syndrome, PANS, and more. Please help us grow our message by subscribing to our podcast channel and sharing the podcast on your social networks. For more information, visit bionexushealth.com.
Before we started on the BioNexus health protocol, I would say that my son was a nightmare. His behavior was a nightmare. School was a nightmare. And I would say after we started treating, the clouds started to lift, the sun started to shine, and I could really see my son reemerging. The little boy that I once knew, that that I loved and that I knew. And my son was definitely a joy to be around, and he was a pleasure. He is my only son. He's my only child. And I do live for him. And he was always he was a joy to be around. He had a very spirited personality. I would say it was rather robust at times. But he was a joy to be around. And it was brought from a nightmare situation to a situation where I have a very loving child, again, a warm child, just a pleasure to be around. And that my heart is full. And I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful. And I always tried to remain and hold on to that faith that I could find a way to bring him back to a state of health. And now I just have a beautiful 14-year-old boy who is, for the most part, many times wonderful to be around. However, again, he is 14, and we do know that the hormones are there. And, he's a typical 14-year-old boy. He's typical. So I will handle those little bumps, little speed bumps along the way, but there are no major catastrophes, to say the least. So he's gone from nightmare to, for the most part, a pleasure to be around. And I am eternally grateful for that. I really am. And that is spoken from the heart. It is.
Information within this video, audio, or text, collectively known as the podcast, has not been reviewed by the FDA. Nothing within the podcast is intended as or should be construed as medical advice. Information is for general informational and educational purposes only. Consumers of the podcast should consult with their healthcare practitioners for medical recommendations. Seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider. Do not disregard the advice of a healthcare provider based on any information from the podcast. The information within the podcast may contain information concerning dietary supplements or over-the-counter products that are not drugs. Our dietary supplement products are not intended for use as a means to cure, treat, prevent, diagnose, or mitigate any disease or other medical or abnormal condition.